They called me to the principal's office during third period on a Thursday, October 14th, 2021. I'd been teaching American history at Roosevelt High School in suburban Pennsylvania for 18 years. I was 43 years old. I had tenure, excellent evaluations, awards from the district, a classroom full of students who were in the middle of a unit on the civil rights movement. Principal Vickers sat behind his desk with the superintendent, Dr. Patricia Morrison, and the district's HR director, a woman named Janet, whose last name I can't remember. The energy in the room was wrong immediately. Tense, formal, careful. "Ms. Wallace, please sit down," Vickers said. I sat. "What's this about? My students are waiting." "We've received a complaint," Dr. Morrison interrupted, "from a parent, a serious complaint about inappropriate classroom content and behavior that made students uncomfortable." My stomach dropped. "What complaint? From which parent?" "We can't disclose that information at this time, but the allegations are serious enough that we're placing you on immediate administrative leave pending investigation." "What allegations? What did I supposedly do?" Dr. Morrison consulted a folder. "The complaint states that you've been teaching racially divisive content, making white students feel guilty for their race, and creating a hostile classroom environment through discussions about systemic racism. The parent alleges their child has been coming home upset and feeling targeted." I stared at her. "We're studying the civil rights movement. That's literally in the curriculum. Are you saying I can't teach about racism in American history?" "You can teach about history, but there's a difference between education and indoctrination. The complaint suggests you've crossed that line." "That's absurd. Who made this complaint? Which student?" "We're not at liberty to say." "So I'm being suspended based on an anonymous accusation with no specifics and no chance to defend myself?" Janet from HR spoke for the first time. "This isn't a punishment, Ms. Wallace. It's a precautionary measure while we investigate. You'll receive full pay during the leave. We just need to ensure the learning environment is safe for all students." "My classroom is safe. I've been teaching here for 18 years without a single complaint like this. This is—" I stopped, took a breath. "This is retaliation." "Retaliation for what?" Vickers asked. "For giving Tyler Morrison a failing grade last week." Silence. Dr. Morrison's face went very still. Tyler Morrison was her nephew, a senior who'd done almost no work all semester, had failed his midterm, and was at risk of not graduating. I'd given him a D- as a midterm grade with a note that he needed to do makeup work or he'd fail the semester. "That's a serious accusation," Dr. Morrison said carefully. "Are you suggesting I would abuse my position over a grade?" "I'm suggesting the timing is suspicious. I've been teaching this unit the same way for 10 years. No complaints. Then I fail your nephew and suddenly I'm creating a hostile environment?" "Ms. Wallace, I think you should stop talking," Janet said. "We're placing you on leave effective immediately. You'll need to pack up your personal items from your classroom. A substitute will take over your classes. We'll be in touch about the investigation timeline." I was walked out of the building by a security guard, like a criminal, like someone who'd done something wrong. My students watched through classroom windows as I carried a box of personal items, photos, books, the mug that said "World's Okayest Teacher" that a student had given me as a joke, to my car in the parking lot. 18 years of teaching. Gone in 20 minutes. My name is Carol Wallace. I'm 45 now, but I was 43 when I was fired from Roosevelt High School based on a manufactured accusation that conveniently appeared after I gave the superintendent's nephew a failing grade. 2 years later, after a lawsuit that consumed my life and my savings, a jury awarded me $340,000 and vindicated me completely. And I still can't get a teaching job, because the system protects itself, and individuals are expendable. The investigation was a foregone conclusion. I knew it the moment they suspended me. They weren't investigating whether the complaint was valid. They were building a case for my termination, and over the next 3 weeks, they did exactly that. They interviewed students, but not randomly. They interviewed the students who'd struggled in my class, who'd received poor grades, who had reasons to say negative things. They asked leading questions. Did Ms. Wallace ever make you feel uncomfortable discussing race? Did she ever seem to focus more on white people's wrongdoing? Did you ever feel blamed for historical events? Some students said no. Some said yes. The ones who said yes were emphasized in the report. The ones who said no were noted as outliers. They reviewed my lesson plans, found examples of materials I'd used, primary sources from civil rights leaders, articles about systemic racism, documentary clips about segregation, and framed them as evidence of ideological bias. Never mind that these were standard educational materials. Never mind that teaching about racism requires discussing racism. They made it sound like I was conducting indoctrination sessions. They interviewed my colleagues. Most were supportive. A few, teachers who'd clashed with me over the years, who resented that I'd questioned administrative decisions or pushed back on district policies, said I could be difficult and opinionated, that I didn't always follow directives, that I had my own ideas about how to teach. None of that had anything to do with the accusation. But it became part of the narrative. Carol Wallace is a problem employee. Always has been. This complaint is just the most recent issue in a pattern of behavior. 3 weeks after my suspension, I was called to a hearing with the school board, told I could bring representation. I brought my union rep, a tired man named Ed, who'd been doing this for 20 years and had the defeated air of someone who'd seen it all. The hearing lasted 90 minutes. The district presented their findings. Multiple students reported feeling uncomfortable in my classroom. My teaching materials showed ideological bias. I had a history of being difficult and not following administrative guidance. The parents' complaint was credible and corroborated by the investigation. I was given 15 minutes to respond. I said the complaint was retaliation for the grade I'd given Tyler Morrison. I said the investigation was biased and designed to support a predetermined outcome. I said I'd done nothing wrong except teach American history honestly. The board deliberated for 30 minutes, came back with their decision, termination for cause, effective immediately. I'd lose my tenure, my benefits, my pension credits for that year, and they'd report the termination to the state education department, which would flag my teaching license. Ed, the union rep, looked at me sadly. "I'm sorry, Carol. They made up their minds before this hearing started." "Can we appeal?" "You can file a grievance through the union." "But honestly, the union's not going to fight this hard. You pissed off the superintendent. That's a losing battle." He was right. The union filed a perfunctory grievance that went nowhere. They weren't willing to challenge the district aggressively. Too much at stake in other negotiations. One teacher wasn't worth jeopardizing the relationship with administration, so I was alone. I tried to find another teaching position, applied to every school district within 50 miles. Got no responses. The termination on my record was radioactive. No one wanted to touch a teacher who'd been fired for creating a hostile environment. Didn't matter that the accusation was bullshit. Didn't matter that I'd had 18 years of excellent service before this. The termination was all that mattered. I burned through my savings, couldn't pay rent, moved in with my sister in her spare bedroom. At 43 years old, sleeping in a twin bed surrounded by boxes of my belongings, unemployed and unemployable. That's when I decided to sue. I found a lawyer through a friend's recommendation. His name was David Chen, mid-40s, ran a small employment law practice. We met in his office, cramped, cluttered with files, the kind of place that looked nothing like TV lawyers' offices. "Tell me what happened," he said. I told him all of it. The failing grade, the convenient complaint, the biased investigation, the predetermined hearing, the way the union abandoned me. He took notes, asked questions, then said, "Okay, this is wrongful termination. Classic retaliation case. You were fired for giving a bad grade to the superintendent's nephew, and they manufactured a pretext to do it. The complaint about your teaching is obviously bogus. You've got 18 years of good evaluations and no prior complaints. The investigation was a sham designed to support the outcome they wanted. Can we prove that? Maybe. We'll need to get discovery. The complaint itself, the investigation records, communications between Morrison and the school board. We'll depose everyone involved. We'll interview students. If we can show the complaint came from Tyler Morrison's family and that the investigation was designed to support a predetermined outcome, we've got a case. What are the chances we win?" He was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, 50-50. These cases are hard. School districts have broad discretion in personnel decisions. They have good lawyers and deep pockets, and juries sometimes side with institutions over individuals. But you've got a strong story. Good service record, clear retaliation motive. If we can prove it, we can win. How much will this cost?" "I work on contingency. I don't get paid unless you win. But you'll need to cover court costs, filing fees, expert witnesses, depositions, maybe $20,000 to $30,000 total." I didn't have $20,000 to $30,000, but I also didn't have a choice. This was my career, my reputation, my life. If I didn't fight, the narrative would stand forever. Carol Wallace was a bad teacher who got fired for good reason. I borrowed money from my sister, took out a personal loan. We filed the lawsuit in January 2022. Wrongful termination, retaliation, breach of contract. We sued the school district, the school board, and Dr. Morrison personally. The discovery process was brutal. We spent months fighting for documents. The district claimed everything was privileged or confidential. We had to file motions to compel production. Eventually, through court orders, we got the records, and they were damning. The original complaint had come from Tyler Morrison's mother, Dr. Morrison's sister. It was filed 2 days after I gave Tyler his failing midterm grade. The complaint was vague and full of generalizations. Inappropriate discussions, making students uncomfortable, divisive content, no specific incidents, no concrete examples, just accusations designed to sound serious without being provable. The investigation was a joke. The investigator, a district HR employee, not an independent party, had interviewed only students suggested by administrators, had used leading questions, had characterized ambiguous responses as supporting the complaint, had ignored exculpatory evidence. The report was written to support termination before the investigation even concluded. Communications between Dr. Morrison and board members showed she'd been pressuring them to act quickly. We need to remove this teacher before she causes more problems. Her attitude has been an issue for years. This is an opportunity to make a change. It was retaliation. Clear, obvious, documented retaliation. They'd manufactured a pretext to fire me for giving the superintendent's nephew a bad grade. David was elated. This is it. This is exactly what we needed. They're screwed. But the district didn't back down. They denied everything. Said the termination was legitimate, said my teaching had been problematic, said they'd followed proper procedures, and they attacked me. Personally, aggressively. My deposition lasted 6 hours. The district's attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Reeves, who specialized in defending institutions, went after me relentlessly. Asked about every negative interaction I'd ever had with administrators. Every disagreement, every time I'd questioned a decision or pushed back on a policy. Isn't it true that in 2017, you refused to follow the district's directive to use a specific textbook? I supplemented it with additional materials. The textbook was outdated. But you didn't follow the directive. I used my professional judgment to provide better education. Isn't it true that multiple administrators have described you as difficult to work with? I advocate for my students. Sometimes that means disagreeing with administrators. So you admit you're difficult. I admit I have opinions about education, and I'm willing to voice them. She went through 18 years of my career, finding every moment where I'd been less than perfectly compliant, every time I'd questioned authority, every time I'd done things my own way. And she framed all of it as evidence that I was a problem employee who deserved to be fired. The accusation about my teaching, the supposed reason for termination, was almost secondary. The real narrative they were building was, Carol Wallace has always been difficult, and the district finally had enough. I left that deposition feeling destroyed, not because she'd uncovered anything damning, she hadn't, but because she'd taken 20 years of me being a dedicated, passionate teacher who cared about doing good work, and reframed it as me being insubordinate and problematic. That's what they do, David said when I told him how it went. They can't defend the termination on the merits, so they attack your character, make the jury think you're difficult, and maybe you deserve to be fired even if the specific reason was bogus. It's a classic defense strategy. Will it work? Not if we present our case well, but it makes things harder. The trial began in March 2023, 16 months after we'd filed suit. It lasted 2 weeks. The district brought in experts who testified about divisive pedagogy and age-appropriate content. They brought in the few students who'd said negative things about my class. They brought in administrators who testified that I'd been resistant to guidance. We brought in dozens of students who said I'd been their favorite teacher, who said my class had challenged them and made them think, who said they'd never felt uncomfortable or targeted. We brought in colleagues who said I was respected and effective. We brought in curriculum experts who said my teaching was well within professional norms, and we showed the jury the evidence of retaliation, the complaint from Morrison's sister, the timeline connecting the failing grade to the suspension, the communications showing Morrison pressuring the board, the sham investigation designed to support a predetermined outcome. The jury deliberated for 2 days, came back with a verdict. The district had wrongfully terminated me in retaliation for giving Tyler Morrison a failing grade. They awarded me $340,000 in damages, lost wages, emotional distress, damage to reputation, and they issued findings that my termination was improper and should be expunged from my record. I won. Complete vindication. The jury saw through the district's bullshit and ruled in my favor. David hugged me in the courtroom. You did it. You beat them. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated, proud, but I mostly felt exhausted and empty. Because winning the case didn't undo the damage. The district appealed, spent another year dragging it out, eventually settled for the full amount rather than risk an appellate court upholding the verdict and adding more damages. I received $340,000 minus David's contingency fee and costs, walked away with about $210,000 after taxes. It sounds like a lot of money. It's not. Not when you've been unemployed for 2 years, burned through your savings, destroyed your credit, and have no career prospects. Because here's what winning taught me. Vindication doesn't restore your life. I tried to get my teaching license reinstated without the termination flag. The state board reviewed the jury verdict and agreed to clear my record. On paper, I was vindicated. On paper, I'd never been properly terminated. But Google doesn't care about paper. When you search Carol Wallace Teacher Pennsylvania, the first results are news articles about the lawsuit. Teacher sues district after termination. School district pays $340,000 in wrongful termination case. Jury finds district retaliated against teacher. Every article mentions that I sued my former employer. None of them lead with teacher vindicated after false accusations. The narrative that sticks is, this teacher was fired, sued, and won money. And when you're a school district looking to hire, and you see a candidate who sued their previous employer, even if they won, even if they were right, you move on to the next application. Because maybe they were right, but maybe they're also litigious. Maybe they're difficult. Maybe they'll sue us too if something goes wrong. I applied to 47 teaching positions over 18 months, got 3 interviews. None of them resulted in offers. At one interview, the principal said, I see you had some difficulties at your previous district. Can you talk about that? I was wrongfully terminated and vindicated by a jury. The case is public record. Right, but you sued your employer. That's a concern. We need teachers who can work within the system, not against it. I was fired for giving a failing grade to the superintendent's nephew. The jury agreed it was retaliation. I was right. I'm sure you were, but we have to think about fit, about whether you'd be comfortable here, and honestly, your history suggests you might not be. I didn't get the job. None of them did, because I'd committed the cardinal sin of fighting back, of not accepting my termination quietly, of making the institution look bad by proving they were wrong. The vindication that was supposed to restore my career actually made me unemployable. I'm 45 now, 3 years since the termination, 2 years since the verdict. I work as a tutor, make maybe $40,000 a year, helping high school students with history and writing. It's fine work. The students are good, but it's not teaching. Not really. I've thought about moving to another state, starting over somewhere my name doesn't pull up lawsuit articles. But teaching licenses don't always transfer cleanly, and I don't have the energy to rebuild from scratch. I've thought about leaving education entirely, but I'm 45 years old with a master's in education and 20 years of teaching experience. What else would I do? So I tutor, and I live with the knowledge that I was right, I won, I was vindicated, and it didn't matter. My sister asks me sometimes if I regret the lawsuit. You got money, but you lost your career. Was it worth it? I don't know how to answer that. Financially? No. I spent $30,000 in costs to win 210,000 Tlattlers after fees and taxes. That's $180,000 for 2 years of unemployment and the end of my career. I'd have been better off finding a new job immediately and moving on. But morally, emotionally, I couldn't let them destroy me without fighting back. I couldn't let the narrative stand that I was a bad teacher who deserved termination. I needed the vindication, even if it came at a cost. And there's this. The verdict matters. Not for me. My career is over regardless. But for the record. For the next teacher who gets railroaded by a vindictive administrator. For the precedent that you can fight back and win, even if the institution has more resources and more power. 12 students from Roosevelt High School have contacted me since the verdict. Students who were in my class, who are now in college, who wanted me to know they appreciated what I taught them. One of them said, "You were the best teacher I ever had. What they did to you was wrong, and I'm glad you fought it." That means something. Maybe not enough, but something. Tyler Morrison graduated. Barely. Got into a state school on provisional admission. Dr. Morrison is still superintendent. The school board that rubber-stamped my termination is mostly still in place. The district paid $340,000 and admitted no wrongdoing. The settlement included a clause saying the payment didn't constitute an admission of liability. They destroyed my career, got caught, paid money, and continued on like nothing happened. Because institutions protect themselves. Individuals are expendable. I don't teach anymore. I tutor. I live in my sister's spare bedroom because I can't afford my own place on tutor income. I'm 45 years old and starting over, except I'm not really starting over. I'm just surviving. But I won. The jury said I was right. The district was wrong. That's on the record forever, and maybe that's enough. Except it's not. It's not enough. Because winning should mean something more than moral vindication. It should mean restoration. It should mean the ability to return to the career you loved. But it doesn't. Winning means you were right. It doesn't mean you get your life back. My name is Carol Wallace. I taught high school history for 18 years. I was wrongfully terminated for giving the superintendent's nephew a failing grade. I sued. I won. The jury awarded me $340,000 and said I was right, and I'm still unemployed, still fighting to rebuild a career that vindication couldn't restore, still learning that being right isn't enough when the system is designed to protect itself. People ask me sometimes what I learned from this experience, what wisdom I can extract from 2 years of hell and a victory that felt like defeat. I learned that institutions will sacrifice individuals without hesitation when self-preservation demands it, that unions will abandon you if supporting you is politically inconvenient, that vindication doesn't restore what's been destroyed, that being right and winning aren't the same as getting justice. I learned that the system protects itself, and if you fight back, even if you win, you become a problem, a liability, someone to avoid, and I learned that I'd do it again anyway. Because the alternative was letting them destroy me without fighting back, and I couldn't do that. Couldn't let the lie stand. Couldn't accept termination quietly and let them tell the story that I deserved it. So I fought, and I won, and it cost me everything. But at least the record shows I was right. At least 18 years of good teaching can't be erased by one vindictive administrator. At least the students who were in my class know what really happened. That's what I won. Not my career, not my reputation, not my ability to teach again. Just the truth, on the record, forever. And maybe that has to be enough. If you've ever fought an institution and won but lost anyway, or if you've learned that being right isn't the same as getting justice, I'd understand if you didn't want to share that story. These experiences are bitter and complicated and resist easy morals. But if this resonated, if you understand what it means to win a battle and still lose the war, maybe there's something valuable in knowing others carry similar burdens. Thank you for reading, and for understanding that sometimes vindication is all you get, and you have to decide if that's enough.